GearNetwork.com.
This is a Gear Network production.
Broadcasting worldwide on GearNetwork.com, sharing wrestling news and opinions. It's Talking Wrestling, and your host, JC.
And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 41 of Talking Wrestling is here and in your ear holes. We are live here on the Gear Radio Network. My name is John Cimino, a.k.a. JC Money. I am here with you, and I'm here to talk wrestling one more time for this season. We have a gigantic show for you today, but first, let's pay the bills here. This podcast is sponsored by our t-shirt store through ProWrestlingTees.com. That's right. If you visit ProWrestlingTees.com/TheJCMoney, you'll be able to take a look at some of the designs for some of the shirts that we have here. The Get Ready America shirt is on there for the Get Ready America podcast. The new Super Money 2.0 logo shirt is on there. That's the logo we use for this podcast. It's a freshly new, minted logo of the old Super Money shield. And, of course, the JC Money vintage t-shirt, the vintage-inspired t-shirt. All the designs done by our friends, our fine friends at IndyCard Media, who will do your designs as well. Maybe. They like you. I like you. So if I like you, they'll like you. And you can probably hit them up and maybe work something out. But anyways, go to ProWrestlingTees.com/TheJCMoney to go ahead and purchase your t-shirts. And I would appreciate that. Personally, I would appreciate that immensely. Well, we got a big show for you today. There was a big controversy this weekend in the independent wrestling world. Tier 1 Wrestling and Warriors of Wrestling out in Brooklyn, New York, which was the site of SummerSlam weekend. But a very big controversy involving the New York State Athletic Commission and 3 participants. Sorry, Jackson Smart. I should say 4 participants. Jackson Smart, I owe you one. I didn't interview you, but I did interview Bonesaw Jessie Brooks, my man Marc Hauss, and Kris Levin, the referee of the contest. Probably butchered his last name again. I think he corrects me like at least 2 times in the interview, but we recorded that this past Monday night, and it's going to be aired in this podcast for you. So, being that is a lengthy interview, I'm not going to take up too much of your time with wrestling news. I'm just going to go over the results of NXT and SummerSlam, talk over a couple of things. But again, being that this is the season finale of Talking Wrestling, I do, and I'm going to say this a million times probably throughout the podcast, right at the very end too, maybe. Just thank you all very much. You know, that I went on this season, I started this season preparing for a comeback to wrestle at OSPW. Obviously, that didn't happen, as most people know. OSPW and I are not on good terms at all. And apparently we weren't on good terms leading up to that, but even more so now. And you know, you can go back a couple podcasts to find out what happened there if you're brand new to the podcast here. But basically, my comeback was thwarted. And the whole premise, the original premise of the season was to kind of talk wrestling, keep me pumped up, and keep the fans, the JC Money fans, abreast of what was happening with the training. Incidentally, Marc Hauss is training me and is continuing to train me for an eventual comeback. I don't know if it's going to be a full-time comeback. I don't know if I'm going to be traveling up and down the roads. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but Marc Hauss is the guy that I'm going to for that guidance and that refresher. But I started this season with, just, normal expectations of, what we normally get from Get Ready America, Football Talk Weekly, or Talking Wrestling's past. I did not expect the love, the support, and quite frankly, the growth of this podcast in the 5 or 6 months that we've been doing this every 2 weeks. And I just want to say, and I'm going to say it over and over again, I'm sure, but thank you very much to all the listeners that have supported this podcast, that have, all the wrestlers that have come on and shared some insight. all of the people that have forwarded over wrestling news for me to share on there, everybody that's liked the Talking Wrestling Podcast Facebook page. That's been a blast. That's been a success. And unlike the Talking Wrestling Podcast season, the Talking Wrestling Podcast Facebook page will still go on during the off season as well. I'll post different thoughts, different pieces of wrestling news, and such. Perhaps even some extra casts stealing from the BLTD concept. Maybe doing some Talking Wrestling extra casts or videos or whatever, something like that to kind of just keep it engaged until we begin the next Talking Wrestling season after the football season. But with that being said, my interview today is with Bonesaw Jessie Brooks, Kris Levin, and Marc Hauss. We're going to get you to that momentarily, but first, let's go over the big SummerSlam weekend results. NXT, we're going to start with NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Austin Aries defeats No Way Jose by submission. Post-match, Hideo Itami makes his long-awaited return. It's been over a year since he has been in the NXT ring. He is back. He hit Austin Aries, attacked Austin Aries. He's back. Get ready. Aries versus Itami is going to be great. Ember Moon makes her debut, defeating Billie Kay with a top rope diamond cutter kind of thing. It was pretty nice. It was a nice move. Bobby Roode and his amazing entrance, which lived up to expectations. Of course, the Brooklyn crowd sang along with the with the theme song, the glorious theme song. So that was pretty funny. Defeats Andre Almas. The Revival defeats Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa to retain the NXT Tag Team Championship. Asuka defeated Bayley to retain the NXT Women's Championship, effectively ending Bayley's NXT career. Bayley was called up to the main roster, and that was her send-off. As she was leaving, she pointed to the NXT sign. The crowd gave her the respect. It was pretty nice. It was a nice. It was a good match. It was a nice moment there. And finally, for NXT Brooklyn, Shinsuke Nakamura defeats Samoa Joe to become the NXT champion. I was out of my seat with that one. It was a great match. Nakamura is my guy. I enjoy his body of work. The entrance with the live violin player, was incredible. Samoa Joe and Shinsuke Nakamura, two of the hardest hard-nosed, strong style kind of wrestlers, and that was on full display. But Nakamura upends Samoa Joe to get the NXT Championship. And on to SummerSlam results here. The kickoff show, the Usos, American Alpha, and the Hype Brothers defeated Breezango, the Vaudevillains, and the Ascension. Sami Zayn and Neville defeated the Dudley Boys. Side note, the Dudleys on Raw announced their retirement. Whether or not it's a storyline or it's legit, I mean, all signs are pointing to legit, but I don't know. And to be honest with you, I love not knowing, so keep that kayfabe alive, WWE. And the best of 7 series opener between Sheamus and Cesaro ends with Sheamus going up 1-0 on Cesaro. All right, on to the main show. Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens defeated Enzo and Kaz's homecoming, if you will, to Brooklyn. Charlotte defeats Sasha Banks to win the WWE Women's Championship once again. Sasha injured during the match. Not sure if it's too serious right now, but or when her timetable for return will be. I would say we'll keep you posted, but maybe the folks at Turnbuckle Talk will keep you posted, because while this season ends, theirs keeps going. The Miz defeats Apollo Crews to retain the Intercontinental Championship. AJ Styles defeats John Cena. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson defeat the New Day by disqualification when Big E makes his return and attacks the club and causes the disqualification. New Day still retains the Tag Team Championships. Dean Ambrose defeats Dolph Ziggler to retain the WWE Championship. Here's another one. Nikki Bella makes her return, replacing the suspended Eva Marie, to team with Natalya and Alexa Bliss to defeat Becky Lynch, Naomi, and Carmella. Conveniently enough, based on the crowd reaction for Nikki Bella and in Brooklyn, WWE ran with a double switch heel face turn. Carmella turned heel, Nikki Bella turned face on SmackDown, and that happened just the other day. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, because we're releasing this on a Wednesday for once. So, Finn Balor defeats Seth Rollins to become the first WWE Universal Champion. However, in that match, the running powerbomb into the guardrail on the outside went terribly wrong. Finn Balor hurt his shoulder. He's going to have surgery. He's expected out the next 6 months. The next night on Raw, he had to forfeit the Universal title just 24 hours after winning it. The United States Championship match between Rusev and Roman Reigns did not take place, as Roman Reigns and Rusev had a pre-match brawl in which Roman Reigns left Rusev unable to compete. Thus, the referee threw the match out, and it never began. And finally, Brock Lesnar defeated Randy Orton by TKO. Lesnar hit Orton with a couple of elbow strikes on the head. One, a straight shot right to the head, completely knocked him out, cut him wide open, lost a lot of blood. The match had to be stopped. Interesting story from that, though, is that when the cameras turned off, behind the scenes, Chris Jericho apparently did not know what was going on. He thought Brock Lesnar went off onto his own, broke his own script and started going into business for himself. So he confronted Brock Lesnar. There was some shouting, some taunting. The wrestlers had to break it up. Jericho was looking to fight Brock Lesnar, honestly. Vince McMahon reportedly yelled out it's a work, get out of this, don't fight, whatever. Triple H pointing out reportedly that Lesnar continued to instigate Jericho. Jericho, known for not being afraid to stand up and fight, as he and Goldberg did in WCW back in, I believe, 97 or 98. Behind the scenes as well documented there. And finally, just one more piece of news here. SmackDown has announced they are going to crown a SmackDown Women's Champion and a SmackDown Tag Team Champion. The SmackDown Women's Championship looks just like Raw's, except with a blue background behind the WWE logo. And the SmackDown Tag Team Championships look just like Raw's tag team titles, except with silver helmet, metal plates, and a blue strap on the background. So, and for those of you that don't know what the Universal Championship looked like, it looks exactly like the WWE World Championship, except with a red strap. All right, we are going to go to our first commercial break, and when we come back, I'll be on the horn with Marc Hauss, Bonesaw, Jessie Brooks, and Kris Levin. Stick around, more Talking Wrestling, the season finale, right after this. I'm often asked about the logos of the show and Gear Network and everything. It comes to me, JC, where do you get the designs, the cool designs for the show and everything? And I want to tell you, I'm going to tell everybody right now, right here, you heard it here, it is Indie Card Media. Indie Card Media is a local business that specializes in making quality designs for your website or your business. Whatever you do, they can do it. If you need proof, you can look at all of our logos, or you can go to facebook.com/IndieCardMedia to see all of the designs, which include a political banner, because they've done political banners and everything. Nothing is off limits with them. Give Eric a shout at IndieCardMafia@gmail.com, and he will help you bring your design to life. Tell him Gear Network sent you, and hey, he may hook you up with a little something, or at least a smile, because you heard it here. But go to IndieCard Media at Facebook. Again, facebook.com/IndieCard Media. Do it now. Bring your designs to life. It's that time of year again, folks, the dog days of summer, and time to think about back-to-school shopping. Now save your time, save your money, and save your patience instead of going to Walmart and waiting in one line that's open out of 26 with 7,000 people in line ahead of you. Go to GearNetwork.com/Amazon and click on the back-to-school banner, and it will take you right to your account, and you can shop right there. And what's new this year, if you go there and you enter in your zip code, it's going to bring up the list of schools near your area. You can choose one and the grade that you're shopping for, and it's going to bring up the school list for that grade for that school. So you can cross-reference your school supply needs based on the list that was provided to Amazon. Sweet feature this year. Saves you a lot of time. Again, GearNetwork.com/Amazon. Click the back to school link. Do your shopping through there. It helps us out. It helps you out. And it definitely does not help Walmart out, but they don't need help anyway. So, again, thank you for bookmarking and saving and sharing our links to Amazon through GearNetwork.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Mr. Gabriel Soul.
And I'm Pat G.
The G stands for gangster. And you are listening to the Turnbuckle Talk Radio Podcast, baby.
every week live and exclusively on the Gear Network.
Where we talk about indie wrestling, national wrestling, WWE, TNA, ROH, every single independent wrestling scene that we get information on, plus our opinions on such.
Find it only on the Gear Network app, iTunes, and more.
You always got to go to GearNetwork.com to tune in and listen to my voice every single week, because I know you love it. And the reason why is because you get eargasms, baby.
And if you want those eargasms, tune in every week. Otherwise, we only have one word for you.
Cyclone!
Glorious. No, I won't give in till I'm victorious. And I will defend.
You're listening to Talking Wrestling. Once again, JC Money.
All right, everybody, we are back, and like I said earlier in the podcast, we've got a big one to go out this season with, the season finale of Talking Wrestling, that's right. So, if you follow pro wrestling, whether it's on the national or the independent level, you probably go onto the wrestling websites, and if you go onto the wrestling websites, you will have read a story from this past weekend where I'm going to introduce my first guest right now, Mr. Marc Hauss. Marc, say hello to everybody.
Hello, Internet.
So, Marc was at a place called Tier 1 Wrestling, and he was participating in an intergender match.
Well,
and
Tier 1 and Warriors of Wrestling was a joint show.
It was a joint show. Okay, my bad. But it was a joint show, and Marc was in an intergender match, and if you've seen it all over the place. Rumor has it it's been on Yahoo or Google or so. Marc Hauss's reliable sources tell him. But you'll know that what happened in that contest has never happened before, to my knowledge. And I've been a part of or following wrestling in New York State for 16 years. I've never had this happen in any of my matches. I've been in 3 of them, 3 intergender matches. So the question I have for you right off the bat, Marc, is what the heck, man? Was there any inkling at all to where this to this even being an issue at all?
No, I didn't think that this was an issue anymore. I mean, for God's sakes, it's 2016. I didn't think that this was a sore subject or something that was even considered an issue. It's a form of entertainment, and we had 2 people that were performing professional wrestling with each other, and it was out of the blue. And you could see it if you watch the videos on it. It's all over the place. And we got into the wrestling match, and not more than 30 seconds in, and the bell rang, and both of us looked terribly confused, and that's kind of where it went from there.
Absolutely unreal, and I know I kind of went off the script here and introduced Marc, but we also have more guests here as well. The other 2 participants that were in that contest, Bonesaw Jessie Brooks, your opponent that night, and Kris Levin. Did I say that right, Kris? I'm sorry. I know I asked you like about 10 minutes ago, but
She came close, Levin.
Kris Levin and Bonesaw Jessie Brooks, the other 2 participants that were in that match, join us this week on Talking Wrestling as well. Kris and Jessie, how are the 2 of you?
Doing okay. It was a long weekend. Yeah.
Now, the first question I'm going to ask the 2 of you is actually the 3 of you, and y'all can chime in however you want. Have you had time to completely process this? And are you cooled down yet?
I've cooled down, definitely, but I mean, I'm still shocked about what happened. I mean, that's not something I ever thought would happen.
Well, for me, it's like, I'll be, I could talk about it and be fine, but if I really stop and think about all of it, I really do get this, like this burning fire of, like, this sense of indignation, about it all still.
Okay, now, Jessie, let's chat with you for a little bit. For those in the audience that do not know Bonesaw Jessie Brooks, can you give us a little history about you? Tell us how you came up in the business and when you started.
I started in June of 2009 at the Ring of Honor dojo. I trained with Delirious and Daisy Hayes at the Ring of Honor dojo for a few years, and then eventually moved on to training at Warriors because of how close it was. The Ring of Honor was kind of difficult to get to. I would take the train there, and it would take 3 to 4 hours for me to get there 3 days a week. So eventually that became hard for me to get there in terms of financial, and the strain was putting on me with being in school at the same time. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, and Kris, how about you? You were the referee for the contest. How long have you been actively participating in wrestling as a referee, or do you? Side question as well. Do you wrestle as well in other places and ref in some, or what's Kris's story here?
Well, I started in 2007 when I was 15 years old. I've done the occasional battle royal or something like that, but as far as actively wrestling on shows, not much. I was trained to wrestle, and I like to do it at the when I go to the classes. I like to roll around a bit, but reffing and occasionally promoting is more my thing.
Okay, very good. And Mark, we already know in the Talking Wrestling audience all about you because you've been on the podcast like 8 million times, so I'm not going to ask you that question. But all right, so let's talk before we get into the actual the match portion. This weekend was a big weekend opposite what you guys were doing. It was Summerslam weekend, and I was wondering what everybody's thoughts were on how the actual weekend was booked before the weekend began. You had Samoa Joe as your NXT champion and an uncrowned Universal champion. By the time the weekend ended, and we're talking before Finn Balor just, relinquished the championship, Finn Balor or Bello or whatever, I'm not sure. Tomato. But you had Shinsuke Nakamura on top of NXT, Finn Balor on top of Monday Night Raw, AJ Styles beating John Cena cleanly. This is on top of the other members of the Bullet Club across Ring of Honor, New Japan, and everything being at the top of their game. Did any of you expect the Bullet Club to really and truly run wrestling at this point?
Well, I'll say I'm not super tuned into the product as much as I used to be, but honestly, I just from being on the peripheral of it all, I was surprised that the WWE would take an outside Andy and not, they didn't really change it up too much. Like they took it as was, and they ran with it, and that was pretty surprising to me.
It was a nice, like I was saying, it's a nice change of pace just to be able to see something a little different, because usually from history is that WWE will take something that's an outside entity and just bury it and build up whatever they can by using that namesake to build something else homegrown, and they did the complete opposite, and they've really put over this outside entity and built on what was already established instead of trying to bury what was already established.
All right, very good. And now we're going to go right into the nitty-gritty here, because we all know what happens at SummerSlam. We know the injuries that have happened, and as of present press time right now, when we're recording, Monday Night Raw is going on, so I'm not going to pretend to know the results, because anybody that listened to my podcast last week, I completely bombed my SummerSlam predictions, so don't listen to me. But all right, so was this on a Friday or Saturday night? Did this match happen?
Friday night.
It was Friday night. Okay, so Friday night. First, I'm going to go with Jessie. Jessie, take me through what was going through your mind. What was going through Jessie's mind leading up to the match, going into the match, and then as everything was going down. We're not this is before you guys went back out for the main event. Talk to me about your mindset going into the actual contest.
Well, I've been looking forward to it for a while now, because I wanted to wrestle Mark for a while. What was the other question? Sorry.
What was your mindset going in, not only going into the match, but as this situation began to happen? Like, did you have any idea of what was going to happen at all? Was there any sort of hint, or did you even meet this guy from the commission before?
I've never met him before. I didn't meet him before the match. There was no indication of any of that happening. That's why I was so surprised that it happened. I was really confused when I saw him coming down to the ring, and then he was saying that the match can't happen. And then the explanation he gave was that a female cannot wrestle a male, and that really surprised me. 'Cause I've never heard that before, and considering that the majority of my matches are intergender, and majority of my matches are in New York, I've never had a problem with that before. In the 7 years I've been doing this, I've never had an issue with it.
When I first heard the story, I went back to my original understanding of the rules, which, when I was a young boy in 2001 in this, they had typically frowned upon it, but there was my understanding was that there wasn't anything written. So after this went down, I brought up the PDF of the actual file of the rule book and looked on there, and it absolutely nowhere did it say anything about intergender except for underboxing, which, as we know, is a completely different sport than is professional wrestling, and I think that's an issue. So when because if I'm not mistaken, according to the video, the commission guy actually rang the bell himself, did he not?
Yes, he did.
Okay. So he rang the bell. That caused the confusion. What exactly did he say to you? Because I know from the video, Kris went to the side nearest the turnbuckle. Marc was kind of in the middle, and you were right next to Marc. All kind of looking at the commission guy that was saying whatever he was saying. What exactly was he saying?
He was just saying that the match can't happen because that's not allowed. Females cannot wrestle male in the state of New York. That's what he said. And then eventually I did leave the ring to go talk to him, just started to walk away. And that's when he said the rule is that can't happen, and that in boxing, to which I stopped him and said that boxing and wrestling are two different sports, so I understand why he's stopping the match right now. He said because he can. So I don't understand. I wasn't understanding why that was happening, because I've never had a problem with it before, and he wouldn't explain to me properly or show me why that this was like a thing that you can actually like verify.
Okay. Marc, now turning it over to you, as this was happening and he was explaining this to you, were you telling him from your experience, are you serious? This isn't true. What's going on? What was going through Marc Hauss's mind as this was happening?
No, I was furious. I was doing my best not to jump outside of the ring and make any rash decisions. I just kind of sat there and let Kris speak his piece and let Jessie go and speak her piece. But really, it's one of those things where it's in the wrong. Like this is entertainment. It's not a sport. You can't do that. And I was furious with it, and I knew that something had to be done. But it's one of those things where it's like, what can you do right at the time in the moment, because it needs to be all sorted out. So I don't know. You didn't see it on the video, but basically, I sat in the ring. Kris spoke his piece, which he had every right to, and I'm glad that he did. And Jessie went just to ask questions, and I kind of just kept my composure so I didn't go out and do something I regret. And then I got up and calmly walked over to the promoters. That's why when you saw me walk out of the ring in the video, I walked right around to the promoters to be like, what are we going to do about this? And that's immediately when, collectively as a group, the promoters and everybody went to the back to start questioning him and start asking him for answers, because to be completely honest with you, watching it as an outside entity from Kris and Jessie, he just basically, it was an abuse of power, and for some reason just wanted to enforce the fact that he could do what he felt he needed to do, and called the match with no real explanation. And then when people called him out on it, he had no real answers other than like just because I can do it. And that's when people started to press him, and then he went from there and escalated from there.
Okay. Now, Kris, from your perspective, and I turn to you last because I think you made the most emotional. I don't want to use the term promo because it makes it seem like it's a work, but you had the most emotional response and very public response to it. So, as the referee in the match, and this is the perspective that really nobody understands, because you're the referee, you're officiating the match, you are in charge of kind of, you're the flow. You are the flow of the match. You know what I mean? Like Jessie and Marc can, come up with their thing, but it kind of goes through you. You kind of intertwine that. So take us through the referee's perspective of this whole ordeal. Because that's the side I'm very interested in hearing.
Well, the moment that the bell rang, I was immediately mad, and I didn't even know what was going on. I just know that, aside from, a time limit draw or something like that, the bell only rings when the referee calls for it. And, it was 40 seconds into the match, so it, obviously wasn't a time limit draw. So it was just like, why is this happening? Who screwed up? Something like that. And I look up and I see Robert Orlando, who's the deputy commissioner of the New York State Athletic Commission, approaching the ring and saying that the match couldn't happen. And it kind of immediately clicked for me. I'm
sorry to cut you off here. Prior to this, had you had any sort of communication with Robert Orlando at all? Or was this the first time you actually spoke to him, and it was in front of the crowd?
We've never had any serious communication. Maybe he isn't the type of guy who goes around and says hello to everyone. He's not a very, not even respectful. Pro wrestling, everyone shakes each other's hands. He wasn't that, but he's not even just in my experience with him, he wasn't even just a normal guy. Be like, hey, how's it going? Or gives you the nod. He just kind of walks around he's a big shot. He doesn't notice anyone else.
Right.
He's had a very bad reputation, from people within the industry as a career politician type who doesn't like pro wrestling, and he kind of tries to, put the screws to wrestling to, make himself look better or to elevate his own status. I don't live in New York City myself anymore, but I have a lot of friends who attend even more New York City events than I do, and, deal with him on a more frequent basis. And he, things have been increasingly escalating within New York as far as the commission is concerned. Recently they set a 11 p.m. curfew. They shut down a match.
Are you kidding me?
No, 11 p.m. curfew.
Jesus Christ.
In New York City. I guess it applies to all of New York, but I don't know how much it's, actually applied to outside of the city.
Seldom enforced over here in Rochester, I could tell you that.
And I know they shut, maybe it was 2 months ago, they shut down a match at Tier 1 for having too many dies outside the ring. And the rules have been getting more and more strict. So the second that it actually happened, the match was stopped. I wasn't surprised. I was surprised by I put it all together. I wasn't shocked. I was just like, oh, okay, this happened. And I was furious. I was just completely furious that, this is a match that Jess and Mark have both been looking forward to. They wanted to prove themselves in New York outside of Warriors in a new area where, it's Jess's home borough of Brooklyn. She hasn't been there in months. She was looking forward to returning. I don't know how much, Mark, how far was the drive for you? Was it 4 hours, 6 hours?
If it's a straight shot 6 that morning, I drove 8 hours. I had to drop somebody off at Monster Factory. So it was an 8-hour trip. I started at 3 in the morning to be able to be there.
Yeah, and so not only from the basis of how much time each person put, dedicated to coming to this event, but they both respected each other. They both been talking about having a match for months upon months because they both respect each other's abilities and their dedication to the craft. And now we finally had the opportunity to make it happen, and all of a sudden it was, being ruined by this outside influence who had no business being there. I was absolutely furious.
Yeah, I would be too. That's just it's unbelievably uncalled for. You know this, I know this, and now everybody else is going to know this. But real quick, before I go ahead and actually give you part 2 of this question, which involves some of the things that you said in that promo, I got to pay some bills here, so hang tight for a second, Mark, Jesse, and Chris. We will be right back, our last set of commercials, and then, Chris, I got a follow-up question to the last one for you, so stick around, more Talking Wrestling on the Gear Network, the season finale, right after this. Hey everyone, John Cimino here for Amazon Prime. If you've thought of signing up for Amazon, but we're afraid to pull the trigger on that because it's $99 for a year and it's one flat price, even though there's awesome benefits to it, I got great news for you. Amazon has now given you a variety of options to try Prime. First of all, you can either try Amazon Prime Video for $8.99 a month, which is cheaper than Netflix, and it also gives you unlimited movies and TV shows, including HD, Ultra HD, and HDR when available at no additional charge. You can try Amazon Prime Monthly for $10.99 a month, which is equivalent to Netflix, but in addition, you'll get free 2-day shipping, unlimited movies, TV, and music streaming, access to over 1 million ebooks, free unlimited photo storage, and free same-day delivery in eligible areas. Perhaps those drones? Maybe, maybe not sure. Or if you're old school like me, you pay $99 a year annually, and you get all the benefits of Prime Monthly, plus you can save 25% with prepayment discount added. It's an added feature for you yearly folks. Don't think they forgot about you. You can go ahead to GearNetwork.com. That's GERE Network.com. Click on our Amazon banner, our Amazon Prime banner, and we can hook you up with a free 30-day trial through us. This podcast does receive a special bonus if you sign up for Prime using us, and that's even if you don't keep it, but we think you will, because it's awesome, and if you shop Amazon frequently like I do, that free 2-day shipping is a lifesaver. As always, thank you for bookmarking and sharing our link at GearNetwork.com. Hey, Dawn, how's it going?
Living the dream. I'm actually just getting ready to do this commercial.
Oh, you mean the commercial where I tell our listeners to tune into Gear Network every week to listen to our show, Get Ready America, that one?
Yeah, John, that's the one.
They can also listen to us talk about news, sports, whatever's on our minds, that.
And a little what's on our listeners' minds, but they're just too nice to say it.
Well, that, Dawn, is a real humdinger.
Humdinger.
Come join us this and every week for Get Ready America exclusively on the Gear Radio Network.
And the Gear Network app.
Okay, when you grabbed the microphone and you said your piece, you threw out the sexist term, and some people, and of course, you know, whenever these types of posts go up in any sort of publication that allows comments, you know you're going to get the comment trollers that are going to say whatever, it's fake, it's a work, or whatever. You were straight shooting from the hip, weren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you, now I'll ask all three.
Real quick, because I just want you guys to know this. Everybody says, is this a work or not? You can clearly see him asking me, and that's not something you're going to ask somebody to work. Before he speaks on the mic, the first thing he says to me, go back and watch it, because you can hear it if you're paying attention to it. He goes, are you going to do this, or am I going to do this? And I looked at him, and I nodded, and I said, go right ahead. So he went right ahead. That's not something you do when it's a work. When it's a work, you know your spot. You know exactly what you're doing, and you go right to it. You don't ask those questions, and you don't give people that opportunity to see the real emotion. But you see it in his face. Go back and watch it, because that's showing the non-workness of this situation.
Oh, I did. I did see this, and like I said, I sent you a text as soon as I saw it that my blood was boiling, because, again, as the performer side of me could relate to what you guys were going through as far as having your work, your hard work leading up to the match, and of course preparation, and there's so much more that's involved with the actual match itself that nobody understands but the performers. So from a performer aspect, just seeing that happening irritated the hell out of me. But I'm going to ask all three of you this, because now it's been a few days. Do you feel that this was a case of sexism, like you mentioned, Kris, or is this a case of the commission, the athletic commission, the lingering tension between the promoter and the promotion and the commission, a case of that, or just a case of the athletic commission guy being a dick? Jessie, I'll start with you.
So you said if it's a case of him being sexist or a dick, or was it a case of him having an issue with the able, you said?
Yes. Is it a case of him? Is it a legit case of sexism? Is it a case of him having an issue with the promoter and the lingering, back and forth kind of between that Kris alluded to earlier on, or is it just the fact that this guy had his chest out and he was being a dick?
I think it can be a little of all three, actually, because I know he's had issues with the promoter before, and the fact that I believe he's been to other shows where I wrestled intergender matches. So I don't know why all of a sudden it became an issue. And even afterwards, after we had the match, there was no apologies. There was no, I'm sorry for being wrong or anything like that. He didn't show that he felt sorry or felt bad for what he did for postponing our match or, for putting us through that. So I think it could definitely be a little of all three.
Kris, what about you?
I definitely think the public aspect of it, it signified one or, it signified one of two things or maybe even both of them. This match was first publicly announced on August 11th, and the event itself was August 19th. So we had over a week in between the announcement and the day of the show. And that was a week for the State Athletic Commission, if they, did their due diligence, to be aware of the fact that this match was happening. And between the time they got here, was probably around 4 or 5 o'clock, maybe 6 at absolute latest. And I know by that point the run sheet for the entire event, including the match list, was up there. And, right on that run sheet, it said, Jessie Brooks versus Marc Hauss. And one of the inspectors, I believe it was his companion, Miss Dorothea Perry, I believe she took a picture of it with her cell phone. So they're either A, they knew about the fact that there's an intergender match and they decided to wait until, public, like it was going on so they could make a public display of it, or they did all that, but they were just inept or lazy or whatever and didn't realize until it happened. And when it actually happens, I mean, by definition, it's sexism just because of the fact that they tried to enforce a law based on someone's gender. But even then, it was a non-existent law. So, I mean, the options are rather these people are inept and clueless at their jobs, or they were purposely doing it because they're sexist and don't like the idea of men and women competing together. I mean, it's your pick, sexist or clueless.
I agree with you. Mark, same question.
I mean, I come from it from a different light because I'm just starting to get my feet wet in the area. But I mean, I really think it was a little bit of all three because, I mean, he was just enforcing it, especially too, what bothered me because I saw a little bit different is that at that point, I had to be able to calm myself down. This is the other side of it. When you go to the back, Kris and Jessie were trying to plead their case to try to understand, and the promoters were there, and there was other individuals trying to offer their help, and I knew that, again, I need to compose myself because I sometimes have a short fuse, as you know, JC. So I had to walk away. So I would be up a good 20, 30 feet away and doing my best to keep myself composed. And that entire time, and what struck me as odd is that entire time, 1, no apologies for being in the wrong. 2, trying to create something out of nothing. When they realized that they were backed into a corner and that they were completely full of crap, they were trying to find ways to manipulate the rule books in any favorable manner to be able to get what they want. And 3, the thing that bothered me the most, and I don't really know if many people saw it, but I kind of stood back and watched, is not once did this Mr. Orlando gentleman speak really any words to Jessie. Every single time she would try to ask a question or speak up or say anything to him, she would blatantly ignore it or talk to Kris. And then when he felt that he was done with talking to Kris because he didn't want to deal with being questioned on things that he was in the wrong for, he then neglected to talk to anybody but the promoter. And I mean, he just kept running out of options. So instead of dealing with it like an adult, he tended to overlook starting with Jessie, then it went to Kris, and then it went to other people until he was only talking one-on-one with the promoter. And because he knew he was in the wrong and he wanted to deal with as little people as possible to try to resolve this issue. But I feel that it was a little bit of all of them because, like, as an adult and as a professional, if you're going to do something of this nature, make a rash decision and a very bold decision over something of this nature that could really have a lot of backlash on you, you better have the balls to be able to talk to the people that you affected and explain to them in a professional manner why you did what you did, than to just act like a child and ignore these people and choose not to talk to them because you can do so. You know what I mean? That's what bothers me the most.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there. And then to your point, Chris, with the sheet is up there. They saw it. They knew they had a week. I mean, it was obviously common knowledge. It wasn't dropped 30 seconds before the match was to happen. And
it's not like it's been heavily promoted for weeks online with promos and with pictures and with constant reminders on social media, where the commission's responsibility, if they're supposed to be, policing these things and making sure that everything is run with a fine-tooth comb, that's their job, to be able to take these social things and filter through them and be able to decide ahead of time before things progress.
Right, and I guess to answer my own question, I would suggest that it would be all three, especially because of the fact that there was ample knowledge, and if they really had an issue doing, the adult and the professional thing to do would have been to speak to the promoter or the participants before the contest instead of attempting to humiliate them in front of an actual crowd. I mean, that's what it would be to me. But all right, as far as all of that goes, we know that the match ended up taking place after the original main event. So y'all ended up main eventing the show. How did that come about? How did everything get resolved? And Chris, you posted at length about it on Facebook, which was what caught my eye on this. But what happened leading up to the rematch later that night?
Well, I'll let Jess and Mark say their piece, but from my point of view, the second we got to the back, I did not let up on Mr. Orlando. I was at his side virtually the entire time because, I wanted an answer, and I felt that if he was going to do this, he owed it to us to make us, help us understand and explain exactly what his justification was for doing this. The second we got to the back, I was asking, where do you get this? This is ridiculous. And I was explaining, this has happened so many times where she's had intergender matches. You've been there for intergender matches. And both he and his companion were giving us, the Rolodex of pre-written answers of, we're not doing this because we're sexist. We're doing this to ensure the safety of the public. And I was like, wait, what does this have to do with the safety of the public? How does this affect the fans? Are you talking about the fans? They're like, yeah, we're just here for their safety. And, the second you would probe past these superficial responses they gave, they really just would ignore you or change the subject or anything like that to get away from having the burden of responsibility of giving a legitimate answer at a time where they did not have one. It got to the point where Mr. Orlando called his superior, who initially he said, do not do it. And, it's not allowed. I would later call a friend who's been working in the State Athletic Commission since the 70s, and he told me that it's perfectly allowed. It's just that his superior, I believe his name is Glenn Aline. I think he's the commissioner of New York State Athletic Commission.
Yes, that's correct.
He finds them distasteful. He does not like intergender wrestling. So, whether it's, I guess right from the source, that's a sexist. He had a sexist boss he was trying to appease. So, that's the only assumption I could make as to
it's
their
just
motive.
It's just a very archaic policy, especially lumping pro wrestling, which, the walls are already broken down on it as entertainment, and boxing, which is a legit sport, together. I just think that their rules and everything is just so very archaic.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't even just a matter of archaic. It just didn't make sense. Because we spent literally 30 minutes with them, both thumbing through their manuals, looking for this rule, and finally Miss Perry goes. She's like, I have it. Here it is, right here. And she points to it, and it says a female boxer cannot compete in a fight against a male boxer. And my first response was, okay, that's great. That proves that you're mistaken. This isn't boxing. Neither Mark nor Jess have a boxing license, to my knowledge. This is not a boxing event. this is not a boxing matchup. So this, so the confusion is cleared. And Mr. Orlando immediately responds, no, see, look at the title of the book. It's the Boxing and Wrestling Manual. So all rules apply to both. I go, but it specifically says boxing. It needs to specifically say boxing for a specific reason. They just didn't. Laws are written very meticulously. They don't just do that. You're like, oh, this one's going to say boxing, next one's going to say wrestling. We'll trade off. That's just not how the world works. And I pointed this out to him, and they ended up calling their lawyers, which was what we were waiting on. Which is what ended up. I guess the lawyer told them to go ahead. They had no grounds to hold the match any further.
Okay, and now we get to the main event. We get to the match going through. I would say Jessie and Mark. I would fancy that the two of you went into that match with a gigantic chip on each of your shoulder to not only prove them wrong, but really just smack them in the face.
Yes, definitely. I had a major chip on my shoulder.
All right. Actually, so Jessie, take us through now that. Take us through that fire, that chip on your shoulder that you had, that motivation that you had. Take us through what was going through your mind that entire match.
I mean, I was just furious at the whole situation, and I mean, I think it definitely showed in the match. Definitely when I came out, I made sure to stare at them on my way to the ring. But yeah,
giving the old commission the stink eye, you gotta love that.
But yeah, I mean, it was just a ridiculous situation that I felt like it really didn't need to happen. But I mean, in the end, I finally got to have my match, and I definitely enjoyed it. And the moment after, where everybody came out from the locker room and showed me their support, definitely meant a lot to me. So, I mean, something bad got turned into something good. So.
It definitely did. And Mark, I want to talk to you about that post-match moment. The second video that was out there looks like it starts to cut off as you two embrace at the very end. But what were you thinking as the match was happening and finally after the match was over and the locker room came out in a show of support for Jessie and to a degree you?
Honestly, the first thing that popped in my head as soon as the match over, she got her damn due, and F those guys. That was the first thing that popped in my head, because at that point, none of it meant, or none of it, how am I going to say that? I'm blanking. None of it was for me. Like, that had nothing to do with me at that point. I did my job. I did what I had to do, and it's my turn to bow out, because that had 0% to do with me. I had everything to do with her, and it was her moment, and it had nothing to do with me, and that's why I gave her the hug, and I walked right out, because it had nothing to do with me. And you don't see it in there, but she was so quick to want to get out of the ring, and I kept yelling at her. I was like, no, stay. And she's like, no, stay. I was going to walk out and like go hit the locker room, but I had to stay by the apron and start clapping, because every time she turned to me, I was like, no. No. And she kept staying in the ring because she wanted to get out. And I was like, no, absolutely not.
Listen,
stay in there and enjoy.
I bet in the mood she was in, if you kept telling her no, told her no one or two more times, you're going to have a third match.
I was just going to get German suplex for the 70th time. That's all.
All right. So you three are, I mean, the press that has come from this has been pretty substantial. And I personally felt it was important to get the message out there, especially because I am not the biggest fan of the New York State Athletic Commission. So, yes, I took this as an opportunity to be like, F you, NYSAC. But if there is, Jessie, I'm going to turn back to you here. Given the situation, given what happened, do you have any piece of advice for any female that looks to you or looks to this situation and may have reservations about getting into wrestling or have reservations about really anything that may be considered a quote-unquote man's sport? Because you kind of collectively with everybody there and the promotion backing you there, but this means something. So do you have any advice to any little girls out there that might be looking at this saying, damn, Jessie did something?
I mean, just to keep fighting and never let anybody tell you can't do anything. I definitely like the fact that this is getting out there, just so none of this doesn't happen to any other person nor does it happen to me again for any of my other matches, because I do have more intergender matches coming up, and I don't want this getting in the way of that. But, yeah, so, I mean, the main thing I would say is to keep fighting, don't give up.
All right, pretty good. Kris, my last question to you, have you thought about becoming a manager at all? Because that might, the mic skills, my man, not necessarily what I would say referee mic skills. Looks like you got a little bit of something there.
Well, I've been told in the past that my personality is grating enough to make it as a manager, but I never made the leap quite yet. I'm very proud of refereeing, and I think I'll keep doing that.
All right, and Mark, last question for you. It's not really more of a question; it's more of a statement from a Jets fan to a Bills fan. The Bills suck.
Really, we got to end it on that? Come on.
No, we're gonna end it as we always do. Throw out your social media. Where can we see Marc Hauss next?
Everywhere at the Marc Hauss. TheMarchHauss. Keep in touch with me because I have a busy schedule that is only getting busier.
And Kris and Jessie, your social media plugs and where we can see you guys next.
My Twitter is at Bonesaw Jessie B. My next show is September 10th at Warriors of Wrestling in Staten Island, the King of New York tournament.
And my Twitter handle is at Ref Kris Levin, and that's RefKrislevin. And you can find me on Facebook under my real name, Kris Levin. And I'll probably regularly be posting things bearing the New York State Athletic Commission as often as I can.
Perfect. I like it. Keep the awareness up there for the commission. Like I said, maybe they'll get out of the Stone Age and into the decade, the 2010s here. But all right, Mark, Jessie, Kris, thank you so much for taking some time out and appearing here on Talking Wrestling. Wish you all the best. Mark, of course, you'll be on the podcast, I'm sure, the next time I have it up here. But Kris and Jessie, keep doing what you're doing. Appreciate the vine, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marc Hauss, Bonesaw Jessie Brooks, and Kris Levin, the referee. Great interview. Long interview, but great interview. Needed to be said, needed to be put out there, and I know that there's been multiple media outlets and forums and podcasts and radio shows that have put this out there, and probably more that will after this. But it's important for something like this to be thrown out there in as many forums as possible. I'm not ignorant to the fact that not everybody in the world listens to my podcast. You should. You absolutely should. But not everybody in the world does. But for those of you that do, the, many followers that have jumped on board during this season of Talking Wrestling, you definitely should hear this. This is definitely a story that, could be, depending on your perspective, enraging. You could be outraged by it. You could find it inspiring because of the ending and what happened and the show of respect that happened at the end. You can find it, you could take it as a learning experience, especially if you're brand new in the business and you're seeing things like this happening. And now officially, things like that aren't supposed to happen, especially in New York State. It shouldn't happen in general, but especially in New York State. So that if you're ever faced with any sort of situation like that, it's been done now, and what you can fight for. So, great interview. I'm going to post the PDF that I downloaded of the New York State Athletic Commission rules, too, so that way you all can, and I'll do that on the Talking Wrestling Podcast Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Talking Wrestling Podcast. I'll throw it on there for you. Take a gander at it. Look at how archaic it is. It was updated last 2011. Such a joke, honestly. Lumping boxing, professional boxing and professional wrestling together, not the. It's just not the same. It's not the same thing. So, all right. Before I go ahead and kick it off here, well, not kick it off, before I take it home, because I'm getting the go-home sign from the producer here, I want to say thank you to all of you that have joined in, that have listened. The increase in hits and the high amount of playbacks and downloads can't go ignored. It will not go ignored. I appreciate the holy hell out of every single one of you that have told your neighbors, told your friends, that have shopped Amazon, that have, given IndyCar Media some love, that have, just listened into the other podcasts, all that other stuff, man. You guys are the best. And, while this is the season finale, I don't want you guys to be disheartened or anything like that. I do a football podcast opposite this during football season, so that's where a lot of my attention is going to be diverted to, and then the official season premiere of Get Ready America is going to come pretty soon as well, so, it's going to be doing that, but I'm not going to forget you wrestling fans during the off-season of the Talking Wrestling series. I'm probably going to do some specials, some Talking Wrestling specials, Survivor Series, Think Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, kind of things like that. Any, hot news that might come out from one of our local stars in this area or even abroad. Maybe, if I feel so inclined to, I'll throw a special out there, a special or two out there. But we will return regularly every 2 weeks beginning in, I want to say, late February, early March, probably March of 2017. We will begin 2 weeks starting March of 2017 through the end of Summerslam again. That seems to be the thing. That seems to be the best pattern for this program. So we're going to roll with that. But thank you all very much. We're going to go ahead and end it now. I got the go home sign. This is a copyrighted podcast of the Gear Radio Networks, and any rebroadcast or reproduction without the express written permission of the Gear Radio Networks is strictly prohibited. The executive producer is my co-host on Get Ready America, and that is Mrs. Dawn Cimino. Again, thank you to Mark, Chris, and Jessie for joining us this week on this season finale. Thank you to all of you who have listened this season and have given feedback and have given input and have just tuned in. I can't thank you all enough. We'll see you, if you're a football fan, on Football Talk Weekly. If you like me and you like my humor and you want to hear more than just professional wrestling, Get Ready America is your cup of tea. I got news for you. It's going to be fun. But until then, for the Talking Wrestling season, this is John Cimino, a.k.a. JC Money, saying so long, everybody. Good night now.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.